Constructive Criticism is sponsored by Oasis Games. MTGOasis.com is the place to get cards for your next Magic event. Try them out with code CCMTG for 15% off of your first order, and use the code WouldThatBeGood for 4% off of every order. Want to support the show directly? Head on over to patreon.com/CCMTG to check out some awesome benefits and future goals for the show. Thanks for listening, and here's this week's episode of Constructed Criticism. Hello everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Constructive Criticism. I'm your host Spencer, and I am joined by my co-hosts, two men getting ready to crush the next Mythic Championship in London, John Stern.
Hey everyone.
And Seth Manfield.
Hello.
So, Seth, just tell us your exact 75. What are you playing? Why are you playing it?
I'm playing right now mono red. Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, I meant for the Mythic Championship. But if you wanna tell us the deck you're playing, on Arena, that works too.
Yeah, that's what I thought you meant. Yeah.
Well, this week is an exciting week. We get a free preview card from Wizards of the Coast, and it means a lot to us. And did I say card? We got 4 cards that we're going to preview today from Wizards of the Coast. We're really, really excited to talk about them. I just want to thank Wizards, for giving us those previews. It really means a lot, and it also means a lot to the listeners. For years, actually encouraged Wizards to give us preview cards. So these being our first ones is exciting, and I'm excited to talk about them. So today we'll be talking about preview cards for our preview cards as well as some additional ones. So let's get right into it, and we'll start with our first 2 cards. And I'll read the first one. We have Charmed Stray. This is 1 white for a 1/1 creature cat lifelink. When Charmed Stray enters the battlefield, put a 1/1 counter on each other creature you control named Charmed Stray. So, this is our first preview card, and when I first read this card, I did not read other. And I was like, oh my gosh, this card's really, really powerful for a common. But it does say other. And honestly, I still wonder... I wonder about this card in the context of how many you have to play in a game of Limited before it's actually pretty good. Like, how many do you think you have to get for your deck?
Well, so first of all, I just sometimes when I hear rules text, I don't really catch all of it. So basically, you play the first one. Mm-hmm. It's a 1-mana 1/1 lifelink. Yes. When you play the second one, it puts a counter on the first one. So you have a 2/2 and a 1/1. Yep. If you play a third, you have a 3/3, a 2/2, and a 1/1. Correct. So the question is, at what point does it, elevate to pack rat status? That's the question.
Sure, that's one way to look at it. I just meant if you have 5 of these in your seal pool, would you play them?
So I think this is the type of card that it would be completely insane if you could play as many of them as you wanted to, in a standard deck. If it had that text of Relentless Rats or whatever, if you can put as many of them in your deck, then it would just be way too busted. You just play one, it just and then they just become out of control.
You have 6 power on turn 3 and 10 on I don't know how many on turn 4.
Which when I originally read the card, I missed the other clause, and I thought to myself, wait, I could play 4 of these in Modern. The first one's just a 2/2 lifelinker, and then if you play the third one, you get 2/2 and a 3/3. But obviously, it's the reverse. The previous ones make them bigger, and it doesn't trigger on itself. But I don't know. This is one that, have we ever seen a 1/1 lifelinker see play in any format for one?
I think we saw. I want to say that it was called Sacred Cat, the one with the bomb.
Okay.
Yep. That was playable, right? I think that was playable.
Yeah. It was good. It was good against a red aggro deck just because it's a cheap lifelink creature.
But it brought itself back, so it could gain you up to 6 life.
Yeah, so it does have the tribal. If there's some other cats like Regal Caracal. Mm-hmm. I guess Regal Caracal isn't in the format anymore. I'm trying to think if there's cat synergies.
I don't think there is right now.
But there could be. I mean, we don't know.
There could be. I do this. When I saw this card, I wondered what the amount was in Limited that we get to where I'm willing to put a 1/1 lifelinker in my deck.
Yeah, and that's a reasonable question. It's going to be interesting because the problem is that once you start taking them in something like a draft, then you're gambling, right? Because you're saying, okay, I'm going to take one, maybe it's pack 1, I'm going to take a Charmed Stray, but then I need to pick up more, and you need to pick up like once you get to that 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, optimally your deck is just planes and charm strays, right? But like that's just how realistic is that?
Because when you think about like a seal pool, right? If you ever got a seal pool that suddenly had 5 of these, would you consider playing them? But you're actually more likely to get to 5 of them in something like a draft.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, I think that thing will only happen in a draft if like pack 1 you just happen to notice the first 3 or 4 packs had one, and you're like, oh well, if I wheel all 4 of them, like maybe I could put 8 of them in my deck. But cards like this, from my experience, the chance of getting like enough to make it playable, like I think the number that you would need is quite high. Like I don't even think 5 is playable.
Yeah.
So what I would see this being played more as is a really aggressive deck that wants a lot of low drops, and maybe there's some auras that are good. I haven't seen the whole spoiler, so I don't know what support there is for that kind of deck. But the one thing going for it is the fact that there's all these planeswalkers that have like multiple uses if you don't pressure them, and having cheap creatures to attack their turn 3 planeswalker that would normally get 2 or 3 activations. That can be a thing. But I mean, on the surface, I would say like this is not a really playable card.
Yeah,
but
I think so too. I will say that what was it? Was it Gatecrash that had the Boros deck, the like the 14, 15 land Boros deck that played all of the 1-drops in it?
Yeah, I think well, I mean, we have a deck like that, similar to that in Standard right now.
I meant in the limited format.
Yeah, sure.
Well, a card like this, like in Theros, for example, and you had the 2-mana auras, the Ordeals that would pump the creature 3 times, then have a good effect. Like those kind of decks just wanted 1-drops in general, and you could have a vanilla 1-drop, and this one is like has a little bit of upside. It's got lifelink. It can get bigger if you have multiple. So if there's something like that pushes you to play 1/1 creatures, I could see this being played.
Cool.
But it requires some sort of synergy support, I think.
Yeah. Let's talk about our next card. This is Battlefield Promotion. This costs 1 a white, and it's an instant, and you put a 1/1 counter on target creature. That creature gains first strike until end of turn, and you gain 2 life. That is, so the first thing that I noticed on this, John, is the counter over just a traditional pump.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something that you thought of when you saw this?
Well, certainly like some sort of, I mean, my impression of like Combat Tricks has in the past few sets, like maybe the past year and a half or 2 years, has been that they're kind of something you want to avoid putting in your deck. That just seems like the way the way they're heading for limited, where you want removal, you want good creatures, but Combat Tricks were less useful. So yeah, having a permanent benefit is something that draws attention to the card. Well, we had a green Combat Trick that cost 1 mana that put a counter on a creature recently, right? Was it I don't remember the name. It untaps a creature, puts a counter, Stony Strength or something.
Yeah, it was 1 green to put a +1/+1 counter on a creature and untap it. So yeah, this is Battlefield Promotion. I think it has multiple. It's not just a combat trick. It's also a life gain spell. The first strike is really relevant if you have a high toughness or a high power. Sorry, if you have like high power creatures, that may just be more relevant than the counter. But the counter being able to stay on, I see this as a very functional card, and it's for sure going to see plenty of limited play. Like not combat tricks traditionally aren't super high picks, I would say, but you do put them in your deck. Like they normally make the cut. So
how do you guys?
The cards.
Oh, I was gonna say, how do you guys think this compares to Sure Strike?
See, that's the thing I was gonna say is like the thing I'm looking for in a combat trick is being able to really punish somebody for a double block, or presenting lethal like on a flyer that gets through. This card doesn't really do that. The +1/+1 isn't really going to just take out 2 medium-sized creatures if they double block. Maybe your creature survives, but then you're still just getting 1 for 1.
The first strike makes sure that it at least kills one of their creatures on a double block.
And it'll probably make your guys survive. But like a card like Sure Strike, like you just mentioned, that can really punish them for double blocking. And just the fact that Sure Strike exists makes that double block kind of suspect, I would say. This to me, like, I really want this to cost 1 mana. I could see playing this sometimes, but I don't feel like I want to draft it at a very high priority.
Okay. I liked this card when I saw it specifically for limited. I think we'd have to have a pretty interesting standard in order for this card to see standard play. Like some pretty serious counter synergies would have to exist, I think.
Oh, I was just talking about it for limited.
Yeah.
Like the thing about it is that it does 3 different things, but it doesn't do any of them particularly well.
Exactly.
So like it's a multifunctional card, but it's hard to like put it, like if you're making a counter synergy card deck or something like this, just putting 1 counter, it's like, you know, the first strike and the life gain, that may not be relevant. So that's kind of the trick. The issue with building around, with putting this in a standard deck or something.
I just don't see it. I think that it's definitely one of the more limited focus cards, and I think that if you read up all the things on it, it just seems like a card that was not initially designed this way and got some additional design behind it for certain reasons, which makes me think that it's for limited purposes.
Yeah, I mean it's a common, so you're going to see it in limited play, and it's a card that you're going to have to be aware of when you play against it. And it's got enough utility that you can, if 2 of those 3 things that it does kind of okay are good, then maybe you play this card. Yeah.
I mean, it's got big aspirations. If you read the flavor text, welcome to the Legion. You saved a district. Now let's go save the world. So it's, I mean, maybe we're underrating it. I guess we'll have to see once it's actually legal.
You saved this small area. Let's go save the world. Well, let's go to our next 2 cards. We have Ironclad. I don't know how to say this word, guys. Is it Crovad?
That's what I would say.
Yeah. So this is 3 a white for a creature beast. That's a 2/5. It's another common. And I'll go first on this one. The last 2 sets, 2/5s have been playable. Like just we had the crab. Was it horseshoe crab? Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Wishcoin crab. And then we had the 5-mana 2/5, the giant. What is that card?
The hexproof.
Yeah.
One. Yeah, the blue one.
So 2/5 for 5s are having a good year. Do you think this vanilla 2/5 can make its way into limited, John or Seth?
Well, okay. What I think about a card like this, without seeing the full set in context, when a 2/5 for 4 mana exists at common, that tells me that 4 power is going to likely be an important feature of the set. And I feel the same way when I see like a 3 mana 2/4. So I think this card is going to be played in some decks, most likely. It's not going to be a high pick, but it sort of defines what size ground creatures you need. You should be able to get these if you want them, so that, you know, that puts the pressure on the 4 power creature deck to figure out ways around it. So it's more like format defining rather than a staple. But I do think that, you know, these type of cards generally get played in defensive decks.
You heard it here first. Format defining cards. What criticism.
I mean, the card looks like there's people running away from it in the picture. It looks pretty formidable.
Yeah,
as far as
he's gonna knock those dudes down. That's for sure.
Yeah, they have 1 toughness for sure.
I mean, yeah, I think it's easy to be kind of thrown off and disappointed in a card when you see no actual, you know, abilities or text. It's just a vanilla, like there's nothing else going on. But whenever I look at a card like that, I immediately think of its limited applications, and these cards are like, Wizards is very careful in terms of what power and toughness they want to put on a creature, and sometimes like we'll see a staple and it's just, there's nothing else. It's just like a 3 mana 3/4, 3 mana 3/3, or a 4 mana 2/5, or whatever. Now the issue I have with this one is that I don't know So none of us have done any drafts yet, let's be honest. But traditionally, white is a color that tends to be more aggressive. And so my worry with this is that...
Medical emergency outside.
So my worry with this is that it's not going to work in a white-red beatdown deck, right? Like, you don't want to be curving in like high-power creatures, and then your top end is this ironclad Crovad, if I'm saying that right. But so yeah, there's some... If it's good in like a blue-white defensive deck, the creatures you mentioned, Spencer, were good creatures, but they were also in blue, which tends to be more controlling. So if you can draft a white control deck, that's exactly where this is going to be useful.
Yeah, I was literally just going to ask, does this being in white over blue mean anything? It sounds like you think it does. John, what were you going to say?
Well, I think the two most important factors to consider for how well this card is going to be positioned are the quality of the other 4-drops, specifically in white, and the colors that pair with white. If you have a lot of quality 4-drops, this card just won't make the cut. And also how good the two toughest creatures are in the aggressive decks. And if you have a lot of like 3/2s or 4/2s, then this card is very well positioned. It could signify that white's a more of a defensive color.
So I see this card as being good alongside your Planeswalkers. If you get a Planeswalker in play, all you want to do is just sit there and protect it. And this works really well along those lines. It's also going to be better if there's less evasive creatures, because this does not have reach, so flyers can jump over it. But if you have answers to flyers, then having something like this to pair with those answers probably is going to work out well.
Yeah. Next up, we have Enforcer Griffin. It is 4 and a white for a 3/4 flying Griffin. It's another vanilla card, but this one is typically more likely to see limited play in the minds of a lot of people just with the keyword flying on it. What are your thoughts, Seth?
Yeah, I mean, this one, to me, out of the cards that Wizards of the Coast has been gracious enough to give us, I think this is going to end up being the highest pick in a draft. Not to say that the other ones won't see play, but 5 mana, 3 power flyer, we already know, like 5 mana, 3/3 flyers see plenty of play in limited. This is a 3/4, so it's got that extra point of toughness that's basically, a freebie. If it was a 4/4, we're talking about Sarah Angel. So like, it's not that far off from being a premium white flyer. I expect it to be, middle of pack 1. If I'm 5th picking this or 4th picking this, that seems fine. Like, seems like it'll be a pretty decent common.
Yeah, and kind of like you said with the other card looking to protect Planeswalkers, this guy just going to come in and mow them over if left unchecked in the limited format, or at least that could be the case.
Yep.
John? Yeah, I definitely agree that it threatens Planeswalkers. I think I'm a little not quite as high in terms of pick order as maybe Seth was saying. Like, I feel that this is like a filler 5. Like the bar on like a quality 5 drop, even in limited, has gone up in my opinion. But I would say that like paired with like if the 2/5 that we just talked about, if that becomes something that is good enough to shore up the ground, then any reasonable flyer is going to be a useful card in that kind of deck. So like, I definitely think this is a playable card, and that white mid-range decks could definitely play it.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you so much to Wizards of the Coast for letting us preview those cards. It means a lot to us. And let's get into the rest of our show, where we're going to talk about some cards that were, other people got the chance to show the world. So, should we start?
Wait, but Spencer, our cards were just the best cards. We just talked about, like, when the members of the patron group gave us the cards that they wanted us to talk about, they didn't have access to these.
That's true.
So they would have just all picked these cards because they're obviously just much more powerful than some of the rares and mythics in the set.
I think that you were right there, Seth. I think that absolutely that our patrons over in our Constructed Critics group would have absolutely picked these. They didn't have access to them, so let's start with the ones that they did have access to. John, why don't you read us the first one?
Okay, so the first one, I don't know if this is the order you want them, but I have Finale of Devastation. It's a green card, a sorcery. It costs green, green, and X. And this is what it does. Search your library and or graveyard for a creature card with converted mana cost X or less and put it onto the battlefield. If you search your library this way, shuffle it. If X is 10 or more, so that means paying 12 mana, creatures you control get +X and haste until end of turn. So it sounds like this is a fixed version of Green Sun Zenith.
That's accurate.
It can get a Dryad Arbor, right?
For two mana.
For 2 mana, yeah.
So
can also get creatures out of your graveyard, which is interesting.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that is interesting.
So when I first saw this card, I immediately dismissed it, and I think I might be wrong. So I've already seen people talking about it in Modern in the Devoted Druid decks. I also thought about it myself in Standard Gate Ramp, and the reason that I thought about it was due to the fact that that deck plays both low cost, high impact cards or undercosted cards like Gatebreaker Ram, and then also high impact cards like Archway Angel. So this card could fill some of that gap and give you a really good late game, such as casting this for a boatload of mana to kill them with a ram right on the spot.
Yeah, I see it. I mean, it's hard to like when I first saw Green Sun Zenith, I didn't necessarily know all of the applications of it or think of all the different creatures you could search for. And then it got banned like in Modern, so I mean, this is probably almost certainly a little bit below in power level, but I mean, searching for some of your super powerful, I mean, it can be a non-green creature, right? It does not have to be green.
That's really important, I think.
Yeah. So like, even though this is a green card, you can search for, a Kataki, or you can search for a Goblin Electromancer if you're playing, and some like, is it spells deck or something, or like whatever, like Temur spells. You could search for a Jadelight Ranger. You could search for, I mean, there's a bunch of hate cards. There's Eidolon of the Rhetoric. We've seen it's going to be competing with some of those other toolbox cards like Court of Calling and that type of thing in Modern, but it does kind of do a similar thing.
So one thing that I like about it compared to a card like Court of Calling, so two things actually. One is that you can play less of your combo pieces because it can fish them out of the graveyard. So like if you're playing like a Malira combo deck, for example, you can play one Malira, one Viscera Seer, one or one Devoted Druid. Like you're gonna play more Devoted Druids, but you have the possibility of doing that and just playing 4 of these. And it's also its own win condition, because if you had if you have infinite mana off like a Devoted Druid combo, this is gonna kill them, right? Like almost all the time.
Right. I mean, it gives it haste too, right?
Yeah, like if you have actual infinite mana, you can one shot them with a Bird of Paradise, right? You just pay like 23 mana or whatever. But even if you just have like a lot of mana and a few creatures, it's like I can't imagine many games where you're paying 12 mana and they're not dead. Now it doesn't have Convoke, it doesn't get a Dryad Arbor on turn 1, so it feels more safe. But I feel like it's a good, useful card in Modern.
It does seem very good when you have infinite mana. I have to agree with that.
Well, I mean,
to be fair, like there are plenty of cards that deck plays just because they need something to do with infinite mana, right? Like they play.
Yeah, no. I mean, you can search for a Vizier. You can just go Devoted. You can just go Devoted Druid turn 2, search for a Vizier on turn 3, win, right? Like win with the mana.
Like you don't have to put in like your. I mean, like for example, a lot of the decks are playing Walking Ballista as their kill, right? Like you draw your whole deck and play an infinite Walking Ballista, but that Walking Ballista is a card you like never really want to draw. You don't want a company into it. You don't want, if it goes to the graveyard, it's a problem. Like you just play 4 of these and you don't need to worry about that.
To be fair, you can kill them with the Walking Ballista with this too.
to be fair as well, those decks do play Duskwatch Recruiter, so like you might have to change the deck a little bit because sometimes you want to be able to. I mean, there's probably another way to do it, to just infinite like win with recruiter activations, but I don't play that deck a ton. So.
You could play this. I mean, my first thought was, is this going to just maybe replace Duskwatch Recruiter?
Sure.
Just play 4 of these. You don't need that. I mean, Duskwatch Recruiter is still a good card sometimes, but this seems better. I don't know. I haven't really. It does seem like paying 2 extra mana for a creature is a little tough in standard. And maybe it's fighting.
May I interest you in something in our Discord?
Sure.
Is it Fibblefit?
Fibblefip?
Fibblefip. You pay 4, you draw 2 cards, and you have a 1/1 that you can sack to your Prime Speaker of Anifar. Boom. What up?
I mean, it does seem to like go well with a Xanathar strategy or Vanathar strategy.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is certainly a card with potential.
I mean, this is you like Prime Speaker decks would want to play more than 4 Prime Speakers if they could.
Yeah.
You could play this with like Rhythm of the Wild decks. I'm sure you can like haste in like something. I don't know. There's things that you can do with it.
Yeah, I think this card has a pretty high chance of seeing play in multiple formats. That being said, I think its floor is also pretty low, right? Like there's a chance that like just 2 is too much to pay on top without.
There's a chance this card does not see any play in standard. I give you that. I feel that it's good enough that we'll see play in modern, which means that the floor in terms of its value probably is still pretty high. I think this is a card that I would not mind picking up.
Cool.
I don't know what was going to pre-order for, but.
All right, what's next, John?
Next one, I have Enter the God Eternals. Is that the next one?
Yeah.
So, okay, this is a Dimir card. It costs 5 mana, blue, black, and 2. It's a sorcery. It's a rare, and this is what it does. Enter the God Eternals deals 4 damage to target creature, and you gain life equal to the damage dealt this way. Target player puts the top 4 cards of their library into their graveyard, amass 4. So it does a lot. It does 4 things. It does 4 damage to a creature. You gain 4 life. You mill target player 4 cards. You can mill yourself if you want. And then you amass 4, which means you get a 4/4, or you build a bigger army. So yeah, this card does a lot.
Yeah, it's completely busted.
Yeah, this card seems pretty freaking good to me. Somebody was calling it blue-black ultimatum, which I thought was funny.
Okay.
Or for ultimatum. I don't know how they said it, but I mean, this card just does a lot of things, and it passes my theory. Like, it just has enough words on it that are relevant words that I would be shocked if this didn't see a 2 of play in some deck somewhere in standard.
I think it's weird. I think it's kind of weird that it mills 4. I'm just like normally there's not like random like mill attached to cards, so like I don't know what that's about, but I guess maybe there's like gonna be, I don't know, like that just seems kind of like random. But I mean, the other 3, the other parts, like you're gaining 4 life, killing something, and making a 4/4, which is, that's pretty solid.
Apparently there are thematic reasons why it mills. It's something to do with, I don't know that much about flavor, but this site that I found the spoiler on, Nicol Bolas killed 4 gods, and this card brings back 4 dead gods as Eternals. I don't know, something like that. Maybe it's a flavor thing.
All right.
Sure.
Okay, my question about this card. First thing, like, it does seem very powerful. However, if they don't have a creature, it can't be cast, right?
Yeah.
You can deal target to your own creature, right?
Yeah, you can kill your own creature. It's much less powerful if that's your plan. But
well,
do you think that's gonna?
I have a 2/5 white 4-mana creature that was just previewed on constructed criticism.
Yeah, that you could target your, like, that also blocks the amass 4 very well, right?
Yeah.
Like, do you think that problem of like needing targets is gonna prevent this from being like a staple of the format, or like a 4 of? Or is it just so good?
That's exactly. I agree with Seth. I think that is a problem, and that's why I said I could be like a 2 of is kind of where I see this card.
I mean, you have to treat it as you have to know that there's going to be decks where this is potentially going to be a dead card, because we know that there's decks in standard that are that have no creatures in them in game 1. So,
would you play this in your Dimir deck? Are you going to try it?
Yeah.
Awesome. Should we go on to the next one? I think we're all pretty high on this one in standard.
Yeah. Okay. Next one is Planeswalker. First Planeswalker today. Liliana Dreadhorde General. Costs black, and 4. Legendary Planeswalker Liliana comes in with 6 loyalty. The static ability is whenever a creature you control dies, draw a card. That includes token creatures. It's +1. Create a 2/2 black zombie creature token. -4. Each player sacrifices 2 creatures. And the ultimate -9. Each opponent chooses a permanent they control of each permanent type and sacrifices the rest.
Why don't you guys go first on this one?
I thought Liliana died to Nicole Bolas. Apparently.
I don't know. Maybe she's back.
Yeah.
Yeah, this card seems... I was listening to another... I think it was a podcast today. Yeah, I was listening to a podcast today that talked about this versus the 6-mana Vraska.
Okay, so that's similar. They both make zombies. They both kill things.
Yeah, this one allows you to draw cards, which the Vraska doesn't. I think that Vraska is on a power level basis because it can also deal with enchantments and artifacts.
Like that was a big thing for me. Like Vraska saw play mainly because of its ability to do that, I felt.
Yeah, I think that Vraska in a black-green deck right now would probably see play over Liliana, but Liliana could be played in black-white or, whatever. Or once Vraska rotates out, could be see more play in those types of black-green decks.
So each player sacrifices 2 creatures. I don't know that I would rather. I certainly wouldn't rather have that in like my Golgari or my Sultai decks.
No, I mean it's there might be some sort of Aristocrats Orzhov style deck maybe, where I could see. That being said, it doesn't. There's no like, tier 1 Orzhov deck with creatures in it right now. So
I feel like one of the problems with this card, I feel, is that I think what you want to do with this card is play it on turn 6 when you have no creatures and they have exactly 2 creatures and minus it and then have a card advantage engine going forward. And I don't know how common that scenario is going to be where they have like exactly 2 significant threats.
Yeah. And
there's like cheaper and maybe more.
Yeah, because even on like a clogged board, it's like let's say you're outclassed on the board, right? There's nothing set that says that when you're outclassed on the board that the 2 creatures that they sacrifice are going to be the creatures outclassing your creatures, so that you just get to throw away your already outclassed creatures. Like they could just easily have a Merfolk Branchwalker in play in addition to like a Carnage Tyrant, right?
Yeah, and if you have like when you say outclassed, if they have like 4 creatures to your 2, like the minus could be really bad because you're losing your 2 creatures and you're leaving them with like a free attack basically. I feel like it's kind of hard to break the symmetry on it. And for 6 mana, that's a lot.
Yeah, I mean,
so I'm not excited.
It's plus breaks the symmetry if you're actually at parity, right? Because then eventually you can sacrifice the 2 zombies and draw 2 cards.
Yeah, I think if you play this against a control deck, for example, it resolves on a close to empty board. It will run away with the game. But like it costs 6 mana. You have that same. Like you really want to be doing that at like 4 mana. You want to play a Karn that they can't answer, or a Chandra, or you know what I mean? Like even the 5 mana ones that were good against control, like Nissa Vital Force, for example, that put them in a lot of pressure really quickly. This is like make it 2/2. Hope they don't have a detention sphere effect. Make another 2/2. Hope they don't have Vraska's Contempt. Like you're not getting that much advantage right away. So to me, it's overcosted, or maybe like for a very specific scenario or a very specific deck.
Yeah, I have to agree with you on the Karn point, John.
You like Karn?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Okay. Yeah, I think that this card certainly could see play. I think that for me, like, it just seems a lot worse than Vraska. But obviously not all of the decks. But like, even in a deck like, let's say like Grixis or even Seth's blue-black mid-range deck. I mean, you mentioned Karn, right? So like, if I'm trying to get this card advantage engine going, like, why would I want it to start at 6 when all of the deck have access to it at 4? And yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so I do have one thing going for this card. If you play this card at 6 mana and you just plus it, the ultimate is pretty much game winning, right? It's like they're gonna have one land. It's not just a Cataclysmic Gearhulk. They lose lands as well.
Right.
So that's gonna beat most decks, right? When you're playing this like turn 6.
Sure.
And then you could take them down to like one land. So if you can like keep this alive for 3 turns, that's like a game-ending strategy, I think.
I wonder if there's a way to cheat Planeswalkers into play somehow. Like, if there's been a card ever printed that allows you to put this into play, early in the game.
Oh, early.
Like an Omniscience or something?
Like a show and tell type card, you know? Like...
Sure. That's fair. Should we go on to the next one?
Okay, yeah. This one, another Planeswalker. Gideon Blackblade. 3 mana Planeswalker, white, and 1. Comes in with 4 loyalty. It's a mythic rare. The static ability, let me just see this. As long as it's your turn, Gideon Blackblade is a 4/4 human soldier creature with indestructible that's still a Planeswalker. Prevent all damage that will be dealt to Gideon Blackblade during your turn. It's got 2 abilities. It's +1, up to 1 other target creature you control gains your choice of Vigilance, Lifelink, Indestructible until end of turn. And -6, exile target non-land permanent. So it's always a 4/4 on your turn. Can't be killed with damage. It's indestructible. And the plus is it's a sort of protect. Like, it's kind of vulnerable on your opponent's turn, right? Like, it doesn't actually. It's not a 4/4 indestructible creature on their turn, so they can just attack it. But you can give another creature indestructible to block it, and then if you plus it twice, you can -6 and exile a non-land permanent. So what do you guys think of this one?
I can't decide what I think of this card, to be completely honest.
I do want to say that I don't think you can give something indestructible to block it, right? Because it's only
because it's until end of turn.
Yeah.
Oh, you're right. You can give it Vigilance, so you can block it. Yeah,
sure.
Well, I mean, I think if you just compare this to like a creature, right? If you just played a 4/4 for 3 mana, that's like kind of a good deal, right?
It's a little bit. I mean, it's better than that on the other side, right? Because it's an indestructible one during your turn.
Yeah, it's better on your turn because it's got, it's got a +1 ability to help your other creatures. And if it doesn't die, then you can start killing their permanents.
So I think that the downside of this being a Planeswalker and not an indestructible 4/4 creature is an okay downside to have on a card. I think of like a play pattern. Like, let's just say we put this directly into White Weenie today, and like I play. A 2/1 on turn 1. I play an Adanto Vanguard on turn 2, or a Tide Taker on turn 2, right? And then I play this on turn 3. They can't really attack into this unless they can kill it, because I mean, it's gonna go to 5 loyalty on turn 3, and then I'm gonna have 4 power already in play, and if they don't deal with it, I can just easily play a Benalish Marshal right after this and really punish them, right?
Yeah, I think for me, it looks on the surface, it looks good. However, are there decks that would rather be playing this over, say, like a History?
That's true. It doesn't seem better than History, and it doesn't seem better than Benalish Marshal either.
Well, those cards do different things. I think this card is actually extremely good. The first thing I look for on a creature, let's just compare it to a creature, is it's a white creature. It's going to go in a deck that is usually vulnerable to Wrath effects. This does not get hit by Wrath. This does not get hit by instant speed remove. Like, on your turn, they can't cast down. So like, they have to kill it when it's a Planeswalker on their turn. like it's kind of difficult to do that. And yeah, I think just for that reason, like just a 4/4 indestructible attacker that they can't wrath away is like really interesting to me.
I think that's a really good point.
I mean, there are answers. You can Vraska's Contempt it, but what I find Tax's control decks are when your threats can only be answered by like one of their things, because you can play whatever threat you draw, and they have to draw the right answers to line up. And this is a card that like a lot of normal answers just won't kill.
And some of those decks played Ajani or sideboarded Ajani. I'm wondering if they'll want Gideon and Ajani to just have to a bunch of to just tax the Planeswalker removal.
Yeah, I think this card is good. I do think that the downside of it being attackable is totally okay in the decks that would play it, because they just get to attack back, after with their creatures. And they're
I could see like I don't think this fits into like maybe the way we're currently viewing the white decks, as well as like History of Benalia or even Benalish. Like I think this card is better than Benalish Marshal, but like for that deck maybe it's not. But like, what about playing this with like Aurelia? Like that's a 2/5 flyer that can benefit from these abilities. Seems like that could be a good pairing, and you could start to have that deck be a little more resilient to wrath effects.
That's a good point. Not looking at this in something like close to mono white, but actually in green white or red white or black white or something.
Yeah, the lifelink is kind of scary for other aggro decks. Like just being able to gain life means you kind of have to get rid of this. Even though it comes into play with a pretty high loyalty, another aggro deck pretty much has to focus its attention on getting rid of this Gideon, but then they're not pressuring your life total. So
it is sweet with the Adanto Vanguard, right? That you can attack with the Adanto Vanguard with Vigilance and with lifelink.
Yeah.
Because so it's just the one ability with Adanto Vanguard, so it's not quite as good. But I guess it's still okay. Like you could pick lifelink every time, I guess.
Well, one of the things like the fail case for the card like this is when like you played on turn 3, the +1 doesn't really do anything, and then you're worried about them attacking you back and just killing it. But it comes in with pretty high loyalty, so like going up to 5 loyalty that turn, it can not that many decks can just kill it right away. And then as you start deploying threats and like getting benefit from the abilities, like this card isn't as vulnerable as maybe it looks.
I really like that comparison. I think it's going to be good with Adanto Vanguard. Just like Adanto Vanguard was traditionally pretty bad against other aggro decks, like against red. That's why some of the white decks have actually just moved entirely away from Adanto Vanguard. Like we don't see it anymore in some versions of white aggro. And now if you're pairing this with it, like just give it lifelink every time, attack through. I think that's like I think that's going to be really good. You're putting it down on turn 3. Initially kind of unsure. I do think that the decks that play it will also play History, and that's fine. You can play Gideon and History, and I'm kind of like starting to think that John might be right, and this card might be really good.
After John said that he thought it was worse than Benalish Marshal, I was thinking, well, what makes it worse than Benalish Marshal? I think the first thing that makes it, better. The first thing that makes it better in my head is its mana cost, which makes me question. There was a green-white mid-range deck that you played at the Pro Tour that I worked on for a while, Seth. That one of our podcast listeners had great success with on the PPTQ circuit. I might go back and visit a deck like that with this card. This card would actually fit really, really well into that.
Yeah, the other thing that makes this better, in my opinion, is just there are situations where overextending with Benalish Marshal on a huge board is really bad. And there are also situations where like they deal with your other stuff and then you have this one threat you draw and it's just a 3/3, whereas this is a much bigger threat on its own. And the -6 exile permanent or non-land permanent, that's a thing. Like that's going to kill Planeswalker, or if they don't deal with this in 2 turns, that's a real threat.
Yeah, I wonder if a deck like this can play this and then maybe not have as many Conclave Tribunals, because like if you can somewhat reliably use the -6 to get rid of like a Rekindling Phoenix or get rid of you know, a big annoying threat, maybe you can play less actual removal.
Yeah.
It might force them to go Teferi minus. Like they might not be able to go Teferi plus and keep up a seal away.
I think they would have to. They would for sure have to.
So I think this is actually the best card for standard that I think we've covered. So I'm excited to play it.
I am suddenly really excited after talking about this card. I really want to play Llanowar Elf into this. That actually seems dope. Cool.
You want to give your Llanowar Elf vigilance? I understand.
No, I just want this. I just want better.
Lifelink.
Yeah, exactly. Indestructible while it's tapped, obviously, until end of turn. I'm excited for this card. This set, by the way, it's. Can we just talk really quickly about that? Like, what are your guys' impressions? You guys are obviously focusing on modern and limited, but what have you guys thought so far?
Well, I'll go first because I probably have less to say because I've really only been working on modern pretty much exclusively. I'm waiting for the full spoiler to really work on limited. So I've looked at the cards that we discussed in the show and thought about them in the context of the previous standard, but I don't know every card that's in the set by a long shot. So
I'm most excited.
Really look good, but
yeah, I'm most excited for Dimir and Grixis. I think Nicol Bolas is pretty insane. I don't know if we've talked extensively about that one, but
yeah, I don't know if it's officially previewed yet. So
yeah, well, it may not be official, but so we'll hold off on that. And yeah, I'm pretty excited for the MTG Arena spoiled card was the tapper that allows you to take a counter off a permanent and draw a card. That one I'm pretty excited with to try and Dimir also alongside of Karn, because just drawing an additional card every single turn seems pretty good if you can play that and Karn together. So
Nicol Bolas is spoiled. It's on the Wizards site.
Oh, awesome.
And that card, by the way, Soul Diviner, it's a blue-black. It's a blue-black 2/3. Tap, remove a counter from an artifact, creature, land, or planeswalker you control, draw a card. So 2 mana 2/3 isn't bad if you're playing other creatures in your deck, and then drawing cards seems good.
Yeah, I am excited about a lot of the cards in the set. The set seems pretty high impact. Somebody tweeted out that this will be the most powerful set since Mirrodin, which I thought was interesting. But it definitely seems good. I mean, we talked about a card that John, you think one of the cards we just talked about is a slam dunk to see modern play.
I think it's very likely to. Slam dunk's going a little far, but I think it's got a lot of potential.
Sure. So I think this set's pretty powerful, and you guys will probably be gone next week because you'll be traveling, I assume.
Yeah, we're gonna do our our Mythic Championship show. I assume.
Yeah. So
I'm excited to start drafting. The first thing I'm going to be trying to do is Forced Charmstray aggro, and I'll have to.
Yeah. I'm only going to draft from the cards that we spoiled. I'm going to build a deck with 14 Charmstray, 4 of the 2/5s, 4 of the 3/4 flyers, and a bunch of combat tricks.
To be fair, if you draft 14 Charmstray at the Pro Tour, I actually think your deck would be gas.
What I'm going to do, because we're doing this we're not using real packs, is I'm just going to put a Charmstray in every pack and no one's going to notice. And then I'm just going to have 24 Charmstrays and 16 planes in my deck.
I think you could probably play less than 16 planes.
Yeah.
Maybe put some foils in there.
I'm just going to be like, what's going on? How did you find this deck? And I'll be like, yeah.
All right.
I played it in the Team GP in Mexico. I played against one of the Japanese players, the Japanese team. There was a 0/2 exalted creature. Do you remember that guy? 0/2 skeleton, it regenerates or something.
Sure.
He just had 8 of those, or I think he had 2 foil and 1 in every booster pack or something. Yeah. Anyway, Charmstray. I think I'm saying the name wrong. Is it Charmstray?
Charmstray.
It's Charmstray.
Okay.
Charmstray, everybody.
I was what is a Charmstray? I don't.
Well, thank you everybody so much for listening this week. Thank you so much to Wizards for the free preview, and thank you to our patrons who suggested the rest of the cards for us to talk about this week. So that is it, and we'll see you guys all next week.